Good morning, everybody. My name is Andres Acevedo. I'm the Emergency Services Specialist here at Menlo Park Fire Protection District. Welcome. I appreciate you joining us this morning for this event. Just a little quick about that, what I do. I do emergency preparedness work here in the district. I manage the CERT program here. Matter of fact, we've got a CERT class going on in this building right now at the same time. We also do first aid, public first aid, CPR classes, and we do a 90-minute preparedness program that we do called Red Cross Ready. If you check out our website, which is menlofirecert.com, it'll keep you updated on all the trainings that are coming. And since you registered from this class, you will, for this, you registered, you will be getting emails from us about upcoming events, unless you tell me to stop sending you emails. With that, again, just ask everyone to mute their devices during the presentation. We will have time for questions at the end. And I will go ahead and introduce Janelle Maffei. And I know I kind of messed that up, but my apologies.
No problem.
But I will go ahead and the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you. And it's Janelle Maffei. No worries. It is a completely made up name. So I don't expect anybody to get it right off the bat. And Andres, do we have a presentation up on the screen?
Yes, we do.
Wonderful. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm a structural engineer and I'm the Chief Mitigation Officer with the California Earthquake Authority. And I'll describe a little bit about who the California Earthquake Authority, or CEA, is. We have a mitigation program where we provide grants, and it's very important that people hear about this program from people that they trust. And so we want everyone to know who we are. When we first started, people said, who are they? Why are they giving money away? What kind of a scam is this? And so obviously that's not what we want. We want people to really be able to participate in our mitigation program. So the things that I would like to share today is a little bit about risk. Certainly we live in an earthquake risky area. A little bit about the CEA, as I said, so you know who we are and why we're doing what we're doing. And then about retrofit. Retrofit is going in after the fact, so after a building has been built, and introducing new structural elements that would be put into a new building today to make it as earthquake resilient as you might see in a new building. We live in earthquake country. California is home to 2/3 of our nation's earthquake risk. Alaska has more earthquakes, we have more people, and we have strategically placed all of our population along the coast, which is the San Andreas Fault Zone. So you see those bright red blazes there. That's the San Andreas Fault Zone is comes up from the Sea of Cortez, and then it goes off right about Daly City, comes back on, and then off again. So huge seismic zone along the coast of California, placing most Californians within 30 miles of an active fault. So I always just say, we live in earthquake country. Obviously, there's out here this like nice blue color out here in the, would this be the southeast corner, and maybe a little bitty bit up here, little bit in the Sacramento Valley, but not a lot of population in those areas. So earthquake country. There is a near certainty of 1 or more magnitude 6.7 or greater earthquake striking California in the next 30 years. We selected 6.7 because that was the size of the Northridge earthquake. That was the last really damaging earthquake. So a near certainty somewhere in California of a damaging earthquake. Now we've had a couple. We had the San Simeon earthquake. We had the Napa earthquake, Ridgecrest, either smaller, kind of moderate earthquakes, or in areas where there wasn't a lot of population. Ridgecrest, obviously, out in the desert. And remember, this is that Richter scale. So, you know, the difference between a 6 and a 7 is not, you know, just a jump of 1. It's logarithmic. And so there's a tremendous difference between a 6.7 and a 7. And here's that statistic right here. There's a 76% chance of 1 or more magnitude 7 or greater earthquake striking Northern California. And that's nearly 3 times stronger. More energy, more area affected. So once again, that Richter scale is always difficult to understand. Whenever I hear on the radio that there was a magnitude 3 and there was no damage, I think, oh goodness, I certainly hope there was no damage, because that's a little tiny shaker. Really get up into the 5s, we start to see some damage. So here we are along the peninsula. I live in the East Bay, so I'm kind of looking out my window towards your direction. There's that San Andreas Fault running right down through those San Andreas, the two lakes, really kind of right along 280. And as I said, it goes off right below Daly City. Hayward Fault across to the bay, San Gregorio. I mean, there's just a number of faults that would put the Bay Area at risk. Show off the screen here the 6.9 Loma Prieta earthquake from 1989 and the magnitude 7.9 1906 earthquake. Those certainly affected the Bay Area. Loma Prieta more so damaged very poor structures, and in particular, poor structures on very poor soil. It was a good 70 miles away from downtown San Francisco. But take another earthquake like that magnitude 6.8 that happened in 1868 along the Hayward Fault, and with all of the population that we now have in the East Bay, and you would see a significantly different amount of damage than that Loma Prieta earthquake. Once they put it in your backyard, it's a whole different experience. I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about how, other than the Richter scale, how we look at earthquakes and how they affect us. So there's now the 1906 earthquake happened before we had a lot of science. We didn't have really, seismology was at its infancy. Tectonics, plate tectonics really wasn't fully fleshed out until the 1960s. So we knew, we lived in earthquake country, but not a whole lot about it. And but look at the extent over which the 1906 earthquake affected California. So this is a modified Mercalli intensity scale, MMI, and the red colors are the really strong shaking. The light colors are somebody may have felt it or barely felt it, and then of course damage would go from left, meaning an MMI of 1, to that MMI of 10 would get increasingly larger. So you can see that 1906 earthquake really wasn't the San Francisco earthquake, it was the Northern California earthquake. It, had there been a tremendous amount of population at the time, really would have seen a lot of death and injury and damage. Of course, really most of the populations were in San Francisco. Santa Rosa took a very a hard hit as well. There's Loma Prieta. So now this is an MMI as well. And you can see that the red colors really showing significant damage. We're down in the, in that Watsonville area, up kind of near Loma Prieta, and then along the areas of soft bay mud along the bay. Here in Oakland, in the hills, didn't even have things that came off the shelf. So the other thing is I want to put these next to each other and you can look at them to scale. So look at the significantly less amount of real estate affected by the Loma Prieta earthquake versus that magnitude 7.8 earthquake in 1906. And that's what happens is the larger earthquake is a longer section of the fault that's ruptured. It's going to affect a lot more people and a lot more area, and it lasts a lot longer. They say that these earthquakes that are up in the high 7s and low 8s have ground shaking, strong ground shaking for minutes, whereas we had about 15 seconds of ground shaking in Loma Prieta. So let me tell you, with that rosy picture of where we live painted, who we are at the CEA and why we have a mitigation program. So we're this unique instrumentality of the state. We are a not-for-profit residential earthquake insurer created by the state legislature. And we were created after the Northridge earthquake because in 1984, the state of California passed this mandatory offer law. Now, this law states that if an insurance company writes a homeowner's policy in California, they must offer earthquake insurance. The homeowner is not obligated to purchase it, but it must be offered to them. They wanted to keep earthquake insurance available. So here with this mandatory offer law, as I mentioned, plate tectonics kind of at its infancy, modeling so that we would understand just exactly how much damage we would have in an earthquake was at its infancy as well. And lots of people, I think 40% maybe with earthquake insurance, Northridge earthquake happens and the insurance companies lost their shirts. And with that mandatory offer law, stating that they had to offer earthquake insurance to stay in California, they were going to leave the state. So I think for those of you who lived here, you can remember, there'd be a newspaper headline saying so-and-so insurance company is going to stop writing policies. So crisis in the insurance market, crisis, of course, in the real estate market as well. So Northridge was $40 billion worth of damage, half of that residential, half of that insured, and 22,000 people homeless. So just a tremendous impact on housing in the Northridge area. And so the state stayed with their commitment to make earthquake insurance available by creating the California Earthquake Authority. That would be behind the scenes of all of the insurance companies that stayed, kind of managing the pot of money. Those companies sell the California Earthquake Authority insurance product, the policy, and they will adjust the claim in the event of an earthquake. But it is in fact a CEA policy, and we manage the fund behind the scenes. So interesting instrumentality of the state. Now, we are not an agency, so you won't find us listed as an agency in the state of California. We're a not-for-profit provider of residential earthquake insurance. We are publicly managed. Our board includes designees to the governor, insurance commissioner, state treasurer, and a designee on behalf of the speaker and the Senate rules chair. We've never seen Gavin Newsom. Occasionally we'll have the insurance commissioner or treasurer who will actually come to the meeting. But very important that publicly managed, we operate like an agency in terms of we have Bagley Keene, our meetings have to be open. We do RFQs, so we don't operate like a private company, and which keeps us once again reporting and addressing the public needs of the state of California, but privately financed. And this was intentional. When a participating insurer like State Farm, Allstate, AAA joins us, they bring a certain amount of money, and then of course policyholders are paying their premium every year. Our mission to educate, mitigate, and insure. Mitigate was part of the charge to the CEA from day one. They wanted to educate the population so people can make informed decisions. Mitigate, let's reduce damage, not just transfer it with insurance, but reduce it. And then, of course, our core business is insure. So that's who the CEA is. Obviously, you can go to our website, look up who we are, our minutes from our board meetings. All of that is available because we are in fact publicly managed. So mitigation. So in order to figure out how to put together a successful mitigation program, we really needed to focus on what are the seismic vulnerabilities in single family dwellings, because that was our purview. We are insuring single family 1 to 4 unit houses in California. What are the vulnerabilities? And so we worked with FEMA maybe 8-9 years ago to create a document that would describe what are the most common vulnerabilities. And this is what we with retrofitting are trying to avoid. So this is the classic earthquake safety tagging. And many of you, if you have been in a community that had an earthquake, or you may see these on TV, green is inspected and they didn't find anything that would make it dangerous for you to go onto the property or into the property. Yellow is that there's a part of it, maybe the chimney, or maybe there's a porch part that you could go in the back door and you'd be safe. And then red is you may not go in at all unless you have a structural engineer and shoring, and that the local building department says that you can go in. So this is what we're trying to avoid here, is this red tag. If there's a red tag, you're not even allowed to go in and collect your possessions. So that's really disruptive damage that we're trying to avoid. And so the red tagged house is essentially unsafe for both gravity and aftershocks, and also might have a potential for a gas leak. And so with this in mind, this is what we're trying to avoid, is this, the significant amount of damage that puts you and your family out of your home, maybe even has a fire danger, and tremendously expensive and disruptive. So that FEMA and CEA got together to create this document, and these were the top 4 vulnerabilities that we felt we should be addressing. The cripple wall or crawl space house is classic 4, 5, 6 steps up to the first floor. You have an access panel. You could see underneath the crawl space. You see the short stud walls around the crawl space. This is a Napa earthquake damaged house, and that floor used to be at the top of that stair right there. That came down off of its foundation. Living space over garage. I always say, think San Francisco. I mean, it is the single family soft story issue. And I've got some more pictures of that. Hillside house, fortunately, there aren't a lot of these. These need to be designed by an engineer. And then the chimney. So there's the kind of the top four, and the chimney probably the most common. You go into places like Napa, where they had the 2000 earthquake and then the 2014, you start to see a lot of the metal insert chimneys, because you really shouldn't be putting back that unreinforced masonry chimney. But we decided, since the cripple wall or crawl space house, you can use age as a proxy to identify it. We said, let's start there. And that's where we started with our mitigation program. So here is, once again, the damage that we are looking to prevent or to significantly reduce. So these are all from the 2014 magnitude 6 South Napa earthquake. It's a moderate earthquake. You can see that beautiful Victorian actually came down off of its foundation later in the day of the earthquake. House down on the bottom left, that porch blocked egress out of the house. You can imagine if someone that lived there had a mobility issue. And then, of course, a fire problem. Anytime that you're taking the house off of its foundation or throwing things around, you have a fire issue. Now, so when I say retrofitting, I wanted to just clarify that there is no such thing as earthquake proof, no such thing as earthquake weather, no such thing as earthquake proof. What we're doing is we have identified a vulnerability. We've studied it with some very sophisticated engineering. We've introduced new elements to stiffen it and to attach the house to the foundation. We've tested it again with engineering. And the idea here is that we want to make damage less likely and the house more likely to remain habitable. So once again, not earthquake proof. I could design you a bunker that might be pretty close to earthquake proof, but I can guarantee none of us would want to live in it. So with that in mind, earthquake brace and bolt was created. As I mentioned, we started with that crawl space house, the one on the far left, and we started up with a pilot in 2014. We have now retrofitted over 17,600 houses by providing an up to $3,000 grant. The retrofit is all done under the crawl space. You need to be an owner-occupied house. On average in California, the retrofit averages about $5,200, a little bit more expensive in the Bay Area. We just received $80 million from FEMA, and with our current registration that's open, we will be able to more than double the number of houses that we've retrofitted with this program. So very excited to report our success, and with this $80 million that we are out with registration again. Now, to clarify what this retrofit is, all done under the house. So none of it is done up in your living room or your bedroom. It's all done under the house. Here's that crawl space. There's that access panel back there. The idea is you come in and you bolt the wood part of the house to the concrete. You put plywood in. These are vent holes with mesh on them, and then you clip the top of the wall to the house. Takes about 2 to 3 days. Can be done obviously by a contractor, or talented do-it-yourselfers and are often able to complete this as well. If the crawl space is a little shorter, you can't come down from the top with an anchor bolt. You can come in from the side with these foundation plates. They do the same thing. They're attaching the wood part of the house to the concrete. The plywood bracing is also doing the same. And then occasionally you have a wall where the floor sits directly on that concrete foundation, but you still need foundation plates. You want to still anchor that wood to the concrete, and there's those framing clips. And of course, each of these gets a little bit less expensive because this one, of course, we're not putting any plywood in. So in many cases, this retrofit can be as little as $4,000 to $5,000. As I said, Bay Area, a little bit more expensive. The other exciting thing is with our last go around and this current $80 million, we were able to introduce a supplementary grant program. So the idea here was that we recognized that $3,000 for what is a $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 retrofit doesn't meet the needs of all California residents. So the supplementary grant is, in addition to the $3,000, is another check at the end of the project that will, in most cases, pay for the entire retrofit. Now, you need to have a household income of $72,080 or less in order to qualify for the supplementary grant. But we introduced it with our last registration, and we're really excited to see people taking advantage of this. In fact, I think a third of our registrants last time self-declared that they felt they would qualify for this. So we were very excited about that. So new thing, supplementary grant helps out with, there's our $72,080 is our threshold. This is where we are in the Bay Area. You can see those dark blue areas. Very, very good coverage along the peninsula. You can find the zip codes in our program by going to earthquakebracebolt.com. Put your zip code in, it'll let you know if we are in your zip code or not. We are absolutely in most of the peninsula though, so I think you'll be pleased to find that your community is in. And the house needs to be built before 1980. I always tell people, you might have this vulnerability with a pre-1980 house. You will have this vulnerability with a pre-1940 house. So not a slab on grade house, needs to have that crawl space. And a slab on grade house is presumed to have been bolted and is not included in this program. So registration is open. We opened Tuesday. We're open through November 29th. It is not first come, first serve. So we don't want people to feel like you have to get in there quick, or that you've missed 2 to 3 days of the registration. At the end of registration period, we do a random selection, and we let people know that they're either in the program or they're on the waiting list. And then we'll let them out in what I call waves, because we don't want to overwhelm contractors and the building department. So that's why we don't let everybody out at one time. So we don't want anyone on a waiting list to feel discouraged, because we have been very successful at exhausting our waiting lists. About 15,000 available grants, including supplementary grants going on, because we've used some of the 80 million in the last couple of months, but we're now in 521 program zip codes. We started in 4 zip codes in California and have been able to really secure some meaningful FEMA grants to put into this program. Now, next year, we're going to add another incentive program. I think you remember that second picture that I said is like the classic San Francisco soft story house. ESS will be introduced in 2023. And ESS, so the reason for this particular vulnerability essentially was the automobile, the introduction of the automobile. These beautiful homes, you can see pictures of these in the old black and white photos, went through the 1906 earthquake. Obviously, they would have had some damage, but they didn't come off their foundations. They didn't have garages in 1906. These were added in the 1920s. So the introduction of essentially the garage created the soft story issue. The tuck under parking, I think you've probably heard that phrase. So here's some examples in a number of earthquakes. When you put a second floor above these garages with the large openings, large opening in the door, large, nothing, no walls in the interior, they just don't have the elements that can hold that second floor up above the foundation. So this is the classic Marina district. These are single family dwellings, and you can see very, very serious damage. Once again, these are fire hazards as well. But the great thing is we have solutions, and the solutions are similar to the earthquake brace and bolt. You're going to go in after the fact. You're going to add, this is a new house, but it'll show you, essentially going in and you're putting in plywood and you're putting in elements either side of the garage door that can in fact keep that house over its foundation. Now these are a little bit more expensive than the earthquake brace and bolt. They're more in the 14,000 to 25,000. So our ESS grants will be more than $3,000. We haven't we haven't established that yet, but it will be more to help people. The cost increase for this particular retrofit is that in many cases you have to tear up some of your garage floor and introduce a new concrete foundation. And then our final foray into mitigation is in the multifamily. So I think that those of us here in the Bay Area, we know that San Francisco and many cities have passed mandatory or voluntary ordinances so that building owners who have these tuck under parking apartment complexes, typically 3, 4 stories, I forget how many units are the minimum. It varies from city to city, but these can be dangerous as well. The Northridge Meadows apartment, there were a number of deaths in this apartment. Los Angeles has an ordinance, Berkeley, Oakland, Alameda, Fremont, lots of cities are coming up with ordinances. Sometimes they start with a voluntary ordinance and move to mandated. And so we're very excited that we have an application into FEMA to get funding to put into this in terms of a grant to give homeowners, and it'll be done on a kind of a unit basis so that they have 10 to 20 units in the apartment complex. Our grant would be per unit and would help the owner retrofit this, hopefully with little impact on the residents. Obviously, we don't want to do a lot of displacement. We have housing issues. We want to keep people in their houses before an earthquake and then after an earthquake. So there's also some state funding that might be made available for us to put into this as well. So you can see we've got those 3 programs. The Earthquake Brace and Bolt registration is open now. ESS will be open next year. And then, watch for this one. This one will have a big fanfare, I think, when it comes out, because of course there are a lot of cities that are really hoping that funding will be made available to their building owners. So just one last thing, strengthenmyhouse.com. The Earthquake Brace and Bolt website has a lot of information. We have animations, we have videos, we have the plan sets that you need to use for the retrofit, a contractor directory, an engineering directory. But when people come to that website when registration isn't open, sometimes they get a little discouraged. So we created this website that has all the same information, but just doesn't have any of the grant information. So this is the kind of place that you and your community can direct people to all year round with information about those vulnerabilities we talked about and what kind of things they should be looking to do to mitigate those vulnerabilities. There's that website, very, very important, earthquakebracebolt.com. As I mentioned, registration is open now, and I wanted to make sure I left plenty of time to answer questions.
All right, thank you very much. If you have a question, please go ahead and just raise your hand and I'll call you out. While we're waiting for that, people think about that. Just want to let you know that I went through this program, had my house done through that. It was pretty straightforward. Matter of fact, the most challenging part was getting the bids in because the contractors had lots of work and it took me a while to get the 3 contractors in there. But once I did, my house only took a day for them to come in and do the work. And they handled most of the paperwork. And the other thing that you didn't mention that I didn't even think about, but people might be worried about is they give you because it's earthquake upgrade, they will not, your property tax will not go up. There's a form that you just
There's
file.
a state law. That's right.
And so there's just a form that you're given that you file with that with the county, and so that is not counted as an upgrade that would change your tax status.
I appreciate your mentioning that. That is very important. So the state of California wanted it not to be a disincentive, right? That, if you retrofitted your house, all of a sudden you were, slammed with additional property tax. So there's absolutely a state law that this should not affect your property evaluation. But I will tell you that just recently, a professor, Professor Keith Porter, and his students did a study and found that there is, in fact, a kind of an immediate reward for people who do this retrofit. They found that on average, there was an increase in in sale at point of sale of about 17% for houses that listed in the MLS that the house had been retrofitted. So we're starting to see in California that this has some currency, and that's what we want to see. This is valuable. It's protecting, the kind of damage that we calculated in another project was hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage protected for what I said is a reasonably priced retrofit, especially since we have these grants available.
Yeah. We do have one question, and feel free to use the chat if you are uncomfortable talking online. Michelle asked, is there an list of approved contractors?
Yes, so I think I want to make sure very clear that we don't approve them. I think you can imagine that 17,600 retrofits, it's not prudent for any organization to essentially step into that liability. I think you're probably all business people, you understand that. So what we did is we required that they take a FEMA training to be listed on our website. and they must be licensed and bonded and in good standing in the state of California. We do expect the homeowner to do their homework with references and, you know, checking that good standing and checking their experience. We thought, I kind of think it's, I don't know about you guys, but this is the way I thought of it, is government at its worst. For me to think that I could kind of duplicate the construction industry and do this for less money. So we're keeping it that it's a relationship between the homeowner and the contractor. Let them know that you're getting more than one bid. Let them bid against themselves, but do your homework. And the Contractor State License Board website has great information about how to select a contractor if you need it.
Okay. Jeff asked, can they inspect existing perimeter foundation, previous owner not in building plan, and get certified for building department approval?
I don't understand that question. Is it in the chat? Let me.
Yeah, it's in the chat. It's the second one in the chat.
Okay, so it may be that your house has been retrofitted before, and there are contractors and engineers who can come out and look at it and say that it, you know, appears to be in accordance with the retrofitting standards. Previous owner not in building plan. Okay, so the previous owner did not utilize a building permit, and they have absolutely no idea what they did, is I think what that's saying. And that's what we're trying to avoid. You know, we require that you get a permit. We require that you put that it's in accordance with the code, so that when you sell that house, somebody can go and check those records, and it's right there. Yep, this was retrofitted in accordance with the standard. You can utilize some of the contractors and engineers on our directory will come out and look at your house and tell you if all or some of the elements, if it appears to have been retrofitted, are in fact in accordance with the standard that you should be using. I hope I answered that question.
Okay. Next question was for the grant that will be available in 2023. Will that include houses that were built in 2000?
Yes, so the Earthquake Soft Story program actually has a later benchmark, because unfortunately the building code didn't adequately address the garage. So whereas EBB is pre-1980, ESS is pre-2000. So that's another great question. So it will be 2000, built in 2000 or earlier for the Earthquake Soft Story program.
Okay. Let's see. Next question was, I understand that this retrofitting is not applicable to houses on concrete slab. How could one confirm that a slab house is indeed bolted?
You know, that's a great question as well. And what I tell people is, you know, go into your garage. Most garages are not finished, and see if you, in fact, see shiny anchor bolts with, you know, with nice washers. If you were to go into a house that's post 1980, that's a slab on grade, and find absolutely no bolts anywhere in your garage, then I think you should be a little concerned that, you know, maybe the house wasn't done properly. The tough thing, and I'll be perfectly honest, is in order to rectify that, they have to, you know, punch holes in your sheetrock or gypsum wallboard on the inside to put in an anchor. So we are presuming that houses that are slab on grade are bolted, and I think that you'll find that the vast majority of them are. There's just that caveat that if you know, had, you know, utility closets, garage areas where you see absolutely no anchor bolts, then you might want to be a little suspicious.
Okay. Siri asks about who can design an earthquake-proof bunker for them.
Yeah, any structural engineer could do that. But once again, you know, the windows would be tiny, tiny little windows. So what we're doing in residential construction is that we made tremendous changes to the building codes in the late 1970s because of the 1971 earthquake. And then, as I said, we missed a couple things like that living space over garage. So in 2000, what we're looking is for people when they're building a house is to look for maybe something that's a little bit more than code, because code really what code is doing for you is making sure that you can leave your house, that you're not going to be killed in your house, and that you have safe egress. And what we want with housing is we want it to significantly increase the likelihood that it'll be habitable, that you can stay with your family. Yeah, you might have a couple of days without water and power, but you've got that kit, and if you've looked into that. So that's what we're going for, is habitability with houses. And so just want to make sure that if you're looking at a house, or you're looking to build a house, that you're paying attention to the seismic part of it, and not just the aesthetic parts of it.
Okay, let's see. Hang on a second. Let me go back here on the thing. What was Tom asked, what's the cutoff for the multi-unit soft story building? The cutoff, I'm sorry, the cutoff year for the multi-unit soft story buildings.
Yeah, I apologize. It's a little bit different in some cities. I'm trying to remember. I apologize. I cannot remember. It's somewhere in that 1980 time period, I think. I'm pretty sure. I apologize for not knowing that right off the top of my head.
Yeah. And Siri, to answer your question, I think again, it's looking for an engineer who can design that in terms of, working with an architect and specifically a structural engineer in terms of what you can do beyond code that would strengthen and protect the home.
Yeah. Well, when you're selecting a design professional, which could be an architect or an engineer, you want to use the same kind of due diligence that you would for looking for contractors. You want to look at their qualifications, look at what they've done. Are they a member of a professional organization, so that they're continually increasing their knowledge? Those are all the kind of things you want to do. So we do have a design professional directory on our website, but once again, we recommend you do your due diligence. Yeah.
Tom asked, how many more houses in California should be bolted and braced?
So once again, I mentioned that age can be used as a proxy for this particular vulnerability. And so when you look at the number of pre-1940 houses in just areas of high seismic hazard, so once again, that's along the coast of California, we estimate there are over 1.2 million. So people do go, so you've done 17,600 and the goal is 1.2 million. I go, yes, that's right. But 10 years ago, we only did 8 houses our first year. And, we've seen it grow every year, and we've gotten great support from the state and from FEMA. And there's no reason to assume that this won't continue to be, have momentum. And as I said, I really want people to, when they're looking for a new house, when they're selling a house, for this to be a topic.
Michelle asked, do you recommend bracing a standalone garage?
If you have a standalone garage that has a second floor on it, I would absolutely look into bracing that. Yeah. If it's not 2-story, then it might be okay. Yeah.
All right. And I just take a moment to say something that I'll tell people about that too. Is so we often think about, earthquake response, and we do CERT, and this is all kind of response oriented. And what I like to say is responders save lives, mitigation saves communities. And I think that's I think that's an important thing to do. I think when you look at what's happened to some of the communities that have been hit by the wildfires, where they've just had, whole neighborhoods taken out, people, even if they're insured, will often choose to relocate to a house rather than rebuild. And then it seems like it's corporations that are coming up and buying places and then rebuilding. So, I mean, for me, I think one of the things to look about is it's about saving the community, saving the neighborhood, and being able to recover from that as a community.
I think that's a great saying. Absolutely spot on.
All right. Are there any more questions? Okay. Let's see.
Earthquake insurance through the CEA. Let me just comment on that for a minute. So because we're a state an instrumentality. We're a not-for-profit, and so there are in fact earthquake insurance companies that can sell you a policy for less than the CEA. So absolutely, we recommend that you shop around. Giovera, Palomar, there's a number of standalone earthquake insurance companies, and then there are a few insurance companies that do offer their own policies. So we recommend that you do look into a variety. The CEA has a premium calculator on its website that can help you understand what all the little pieces of an insurance policy are. So you could maybe start there, because it'll tell you what's a deductible, what's this coverage, what's that coverage, and it has this little gauge. You can say, okay, if I increase that, this is how much my premium goes up, this is how much it goes down. So it's a fantastic tool, but absolutely shop around.
Yeah. And I would just add to, while you're shopping around, consider looking at flood insurance. Even if you're not in identified flood zone, it's usually, for those people that are not, it's usually not that much in additional cost. Because there are a lot of things that can happen. Your house can get flooded due to a failure of a water pipe or something like that, that will cover for you, that your standard insurance won't cover for you. Were there any other questions?
Well, it's been a pleasure. If you don't have one of these houses, I bet you know somebody who does. So earthquakebracebolt.com, we'd love to have them sign up. And thank you so much for giving me this time this morning. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you taking the time for it. I hope people get value. I'm looking to put this up on this video up on the Menlo Fire Cert website sometime next week. And you will be getting additional, if you registered through our website, you'll be getting additional information from us and notice of other events that we're planning. So again, thank you very much for your time. And if there are not any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and end it. And I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend and a great Saturday.
Thank you so much.
Oh, well, it ended.
Not the key.
I signed off.